ambiguity and kind of spoon feeding us what's going on a little bit, in my opinion, with the narration.
Oh, you're absolutely right, 100%. But yeah, it 100% is like holding your hand the entire time. And honestly, seeing the director's cut and the final cut for so many years since, you don't need the narration. It doesn't add much of anything to the film, except to literally, like you said, hold your hand. Okay, the work print version of the film was shown to test audiences in Denver and Dallas in March of 1982. This got negative response, so the studio modified the film by adding the voiceover narration by Ford. Both Ridley Scott and Harrison Ford had agreed to do the film without the voiceover because they thought the film works just fine without it. They're right. Both are quite upset with the narration being added, and Ford was especially incensed because it didn't represent Scott's vision for the film. The urban legend is that he comes in, pretty much gives zero effort when he's recording it. That's the narration that the studio ran with for the theatrical cut. Like I said, that's urban legend. I think that's kind of been debunked in the years since, but as they say, when the legend becomes fact, print the legend. So I choose to believe that Ford was just so overdoing it that he gives like no effort. That's why he kind of sounds bored in the voiceover. And I have more notes on that fucking voiceover too. I have so much to say about the voiceover. Here. The voiceover narration in the theatrical cut was not written by Fancher or Peoples, but by Ronald Kibbe, who mainly wrote for television. Now, Fancher and Peoples didn't know of the voiceover in the film until they saw a screening of the theatrical cut, and then each man kind of assumed the other had written it, but because they were both friends, they didn't want to talk shit on it. They didn't find out till like years later that someone else wrote it, and then it was like, oh yeah, I hated that shit. I thought you wrote it. But neither of them wrote it. It was Ronald Kibbe who wrote it, and I think that's one of the reasons Ford was so upset is because, you know, hey, this isn't the writer of the film. Like, why is this guy coming out here and writing it? I think he's bored because he sounds bored, and he's upset because he didn't want to do it, and this wasn't the writers of the film forcing him to do it. The reason that the studio mandated that, as we've established, because the test audiences didn't get it. But the reason that happened is because the production company for this film had pledged about 13 or 14 million bucks. And then just before they were ready to shoot, they pulled out and invested in another picture, which coincidentally you and I are going to cover later this year. But the producers went to scramble and secure more financing. They got financing in a three-way deal between the Ladd Company, which is the tree logo that you see at the beginning of the film, and Ladd released through Warner Brothers. Hong Kong producer Sir Run Run Shaw, and Tandem Pictures. Now, the producers for Tandem Pictures, Bud Yorkin and Jerry Parenchio, contribute upwards of $4 million towards the film. They also make an agreement that if the film runs over budget, they'll pay whatever the cost is to complete it. But by agreeing to this, Tandem, not Warner Brothers, not the Ladd Company, not Ridley Scott, has final cut of the movie. So that's why when the movie wasn't connecting with their test audiences, they went ahead and did it, and Ridley Scott had no say in it. It's because Tandem Pictures held the rights to the final cut. You know who else got considered for this movie before Harrison Ford? Because this is a wild list of people.
I don't think so.
Gene Hackman, Sean Connery, Jack Nicholson, Paul Newman, Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Peter Falk, Nick Nolte, Al Pacino, and Burt Reynolds. Holy shit.
Okay, now that you've said that, can you see anybody doing this besides Ford?
Maybe Gene Hackman. Jack Nicholson? No way. Clint Eastwood? No way. Schwarzenegger? Get the fuck out of here.
but
Peter Falk? No. That's like Columbo. He only got that gig because of Columbo.
The through line with Schwarzenegger is that he would go on to do Total Recall, which is another novel by Dick, right?
Yeah, and he was also rumored to possibly do a Crusades movie with Ridley Scott. I think that was one of the things that we mentioned maybe years ago with Carolco Pictures, which had done like Basic Instinct and like Terminator 2. I think Carolco was planning on making a Crusades movie with Ridley Scott directing and Arnold Schwarzenegger starring, and that just fell through at some point in time. But no, Burt Reynolds, no way. No way. That's a crazy list of people. Fancher had envisioned Robert Mitchum in the role because of his kind of previous work, playing kind of Private Eyes. He famously plays Philip Marlowe in a couple of like early to mid 70s movies. So that's who he kind of saw. Even then, like, Mitchum is a bit older at that point in time. They almost went with Dustin Hoffman in the role, which I can't really see either.
No.
But I think he was very close, and then he departs the movie because him and Ridley Scott kind of have different visions. I think Ford really nabs the role because Steven Spielberg talked him up because he was doing Raiders of the Lost Ark with him at the time. And I think that's how he gets the role. And honestly, like, Philip K. Dick was a huge fan of Ford's, and he said that he was even better. He was an even better version of Deckard than Dick could ever have imagined. So that's pretty high praise. However, Harrison Ford and Ridley Scott did not get along.
Really? They didn't?
They didn't. Which is a bummer. Like, it's always crazy to see these films, and you're just like, whoa, like, this is such a great movie, and then you read that, like, the director and the actor hated each other, or the two lead actors hated each other, something like that. And it's always like, but they work so perfectly in this movie together. But yeah, didn't get along, had a tumultuous relationship. I think, they're shooting pretty much all nights. So I think that kind of wears people down. This is quoted in the book called Future Noir, which is about the making of Blade Runner. Said that Ford wouldn't talk to Scott and vice versa, and that by the end of the shoot, Ford was ready to kill Scott. Doesn't look back fondly on his experience making the film, and Scott has been quoted in the past as saying that Harrison Ford was the biggest pain in the ass he ever worked with.
Did they never work together again, did they?
Never worked together again, have apparently buried the hatchet since, because they get along well now, but it's kind of like for that 4 or 5 months that they're shooting this movie, they fucking hate each other. But it's so crazy for me to read something like that where it's like, oh, these guys did not get along making this film, which is insane because they made such a great movie together. Some more casting news. Do you know who almost played Pris? Debbie Harry.
Oh man, that would I could see that.
I don't know how tall Debbie Harry is though. Like it works for Daryl-Hannah because she's like 6 feet.
Wow, really? She's 6 feet tall?
And I don't have a hard confirmation on it, but looking at her, she's got to be between 5'10" and 6 foot.
She seems pretty tall in Kill Bill, so I mean, I think.
Yeah, and Uma Thurman's like 6 feet, so if she stacks up against Uma Thurman, then she's got to be 6 foot or close. Yeah, I saw Debbie Harry, and I was like, "Whoa, that would be a fun movie." Of course, we have Sean Young as Rachel. She's coming off the huge success of Stripes, which I think is the previous year. And we talked about Rutger Hauer saying that Blade Runner was the favorite of his films that he's made. Sean Young says Blade Runner is still her favorite of all of her films as well.
I mean, that makes sense too, because I feel like as much as you think of Roy, you think of as far as iconic characters, you think of Rachel and her, her hair, her style.
Oh, she looks fabulous. She's very much like a 40s. She has that like kind of 40s pinup type look to her.
Yes.
Oh, Mildred Pierce. I was thinking The Postman Always Rings Twice. That wasn't it. Mildred Pierce. She has like that look to her. And she's got these fabulous coats with like the super high collar. The costume design in the movie is great too. Everything about this movie is fantastic, but I feel like we need to shout out every individual thing. And, being kind of a take on film noir, like, they dressed like it too, they're all in suits or like these really cool coats. I really dug Edward James Olmos's look.
Yeah.
It's like the bow tie and the hat and like the long top coat.
Cane.
The cane, which he hits Harrison Ford with a couple of times. I think he does it like right after he kills Zora, and he's like buying the liquor. He's all shook, and then like Gaff comes up behind him and like hits him with the cane, and he turns around like real startled. And that's when Gaff says, "Hey, Bryant wants to talk to you." Well, let's talk about the score, because the score is really great, and it's kind of a different. It's not like an operatic score. It's a lot of synth. Excuse me, but it has like a very distinctive sound. And as you mentioned, that's Vangelis,
who passed away recently, right?
Just passed away. We shouted him out on the last episode. He does work again with Ridley Scott in 1492, which I said is not a good movie, but the score is pretty great. But he's coming off of an Oscar win for Chariots of Fire, which is the year before, in 1981, which I think is the Best Picture winner, which is a bummer because it should have been Raiders of the Lost Ark, but what do I know? But yeah, he's coming off of that. Ridley Scott hires him to do this. Combination of classical compositions and synthesizers. There's some chimes, there's some vocals from Demi Roussos, some tenor sax, which very much is in line with the film noir. And what's crazy about the score was there never was an official soundtrack released for the film. The soundtrack was kind of like bootlegged for years, and then it was the release of the director's cut in 1992 that led to an official soundtrack release. But no, it's been around for a while. I have it. But yeah, it was in the decade between this movie or between the release of the film and the director's cut. There was no release. It was just bootlegs. Like I said, it's very distinctive. I know that some people talk shit on 2049 being a bit more bombastic. By the way, like the climax of this film, it plays like a thriller. It's not even like a sci-fi movie anymore. That chase like through the Bradbury building.
Yeah, it turns almost horror.
Yeah. It's very creepy. The place looks so decrepit. I think he even like climbs out through the roof by just basically punching a hole in the ceiling.
And you have Rutger Hauer running around howling.
He takes, and with like the lightning from the rainstorm, but also the light from like the floating, like, I don't want to say blimps because they're not really blimps, but the aerial ships.
Mm-hmm.
Like the lights, the spotlights coming in through the windows. It's very creepy.
And he Howard just takes off all his clothes pretty much.
Yeah. He's like running around in bike shorts. But it no longer is a sci-fi movie. It's like a horror thriller at that point.